Supply chain benchmarking, that is the topic for this week. You'll find lots of videos on supply chain benchmarking, logistics benchmarking, KPIs, and so on the channel. But this week we have a very popular individual back again, Trent Morris, coming right up. So welcome back, Trent. We were talking earlier this morning, and I said, what have you been up to lately? And you were telling me you've been doing lots of supply chain benchmarking. So
I
maybe
have.
you could maybe you could share with us kind of the sort of benchmarking that companies are doing and why they're doing it, and people watching this, how they could kind of undertake that themselves.
Yeah, of course, of course. So supply chain benchmark. I mean, obviously, there's a number of different areas within the supply chain that can be benchmarked. I guess the principal focus that I've had with respect to benchmarking just recently is cost benchmarking. Really, it's being driven by the fact that costs in all aspects of industry are increasing, but at the same time, demand is decreasing, which is an interesting juxtaposition. However, it is the situation we find ourselves in. So as companies, want to know whether or not they are doing well with respect to their cost base, particularly in logistics, which is always an area that people are concerned about their costs. And I guess cost benchmarking is a much more cost-effective way of finding out if you're doing okay, rather than actually going to a sourcing exercise like an RFT or an RFP, etc. So we've been doing a lot of that recently, and I think the market as a whole is seeing an increase in benchmarking type activities. So really, what is it?
If I can just cut in there, I mean, it's interesting. Yep. You're saying, people have very often gone to the market as a benchmarking exercise. We've been doing this for almost 30 years, and I've been approached many times by companies who say, we're not sure if our 3PL costs are right or our shipping costs or whatever. Let's go through an RFP process and go to the market and kind of test the costs. That makes me feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And why? And I don't think I've ever done it actually in 30 years for that reason. And for the reason just of benchmarking. I think I'll just be blunt. I think it's a little bit unethical to put a whole bunch of potential suppliers through the ringer, responding to bids, RFPs for whatever it might be, warehousing, transport, shipping, purely as a benchmarking exercise. There's a significant amount of work goes into, responding to bids from these companies. And hopefully you're going to tell us there's a better way to do this. So I guess the sort of secondary message I'm putting out there is if you're going to the market, you're going to be doing it seriously, and you are going to market, not just as a benchmarking exercise. So how could we do the benchmarking?
Yeah, and look, if I can just add on to that, Rob, I think that what a lot of people don't realize is that work translates to cost. So for every party that is responding to a RFP, depending on the size of the RFP, it could be tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to respond to that RFP. And if it's not serious, I agree. I think that I have a challenge with that. So the way that we do it, I mean, obviously we have the benefit as consultants to have run very large number of RFPs over the years. We have managed to, and every RFP we receive multiple bids from. We also do a lot of requests for quotes, which are a smaller scale, maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 suppliers. And we've also developed indices over those times that we can cross-check everything against. So we use all of those mechanisms. We also have insight through third-party associations that actually allow us to cross-check, once again, everything that we are seeing come back to us. And so the way that we do it is we basically get all the data that's required, typically 12 months worth of transactions in the area, whether it's transport or warehousing or even ocean freight, although ocean freight over the last few years has been problematic to try and benchmark. And then once we do that, we can then actually start looking at what the industry is doing, what the industry is saying with respect to its costs. And that can even include variables such as cold chain or DG, which are outside of the normal parameters of traditional supply chain and logistics. So once we've done that, if there's any gaps, We then might run a small RFI or a request for information, but we make it very clear that it is a benchmarking activity. And whilst it may lead to a sourcing activity in the future, there is no guarantee. So we're very upfront about the fact that if they don't want to waste the time, or if they feel like it would be a waste of time, then they don't bid. And I'm actually working on one at the moment where we spoke to a few 3PLs. A few decided that they wouldn't be involved. A few decided they would. And interestingly enough, the client said, okay, well, if we do go sourcing, those who are responding will be seen more favourably from a relationship perspective because they are invested in making it work potentially. So that's really the way we do it. And then obviously we get to the report part at the end, which shows them whether or not there's any value to consider a sourcing exercise, or whether or not their rates, even though they're going up, are actually in line or even better than industry. And then if necessary, we can also look at service beyond that as well to see whether or not that's value for money that they're actually paying, not just paying a market rate.
Okay. So regardless of the sort of benchmarking that people are doing, somebody might be watching this and think, well, okay, Trent does this, he does this for a living. If I want to benchmark my warehousing or transport or shipping, whatever it might be, I'm going to have to pay Trent to do it. So I don't want to pay Trent to do it. What other ways can people go through a bit of a benchmarking exercise and see how their rates are?
Sure. Well, there's lots of indices out there that people can look at to understand how their rates are going against the market. So if you had been following the ocean freight over the last few years, the whole thing was replicated almost perfectly by the Drewry World Container Index. And so there are organisations out there that do have public indices that will show you what the market's doing. You can also, for example, another great one is the impact of fuel. If you want to understand the impact of fuel, just jump on the Australian Institute of Petroleum's website and they'll show you the terminal gate price. Terminal gate price is where all of the fuel costs come from and all of those levies for fuel. So there's ways and means. The simple Google search will show you how to actually access that information. And then the other thing you can do, and one thing that I've done for a couple of our clients is they'll say, oh, we're thinking about doing this. And I'll say, okay, well, send me 2 of your trade lanes that are important to you. And I'll just come back to you and I'll say, yes, there's value in this, or no, there's not value in this. And any consultant, that you speak to who has that capability should be willing to do that, because we want to be able to prove our worth before we actually start doing the work. And so, we've done that with a few clients, and a few have then gone on and done a benchmarking activity, and a few have said, okay, well, that's actually about where we should be. So we're happy with that.
Yeah, another way I always like networking in the industry, and I've mentioned this a few times. Get out to industry bodies, industry associations. Get to know your peers out there in the industry. I know lots of our clients who would know, they've got friends in other businesses and they'll catch up for a coffee and we've had these big rate rises on our transport, how is yours going? So you can kind of network with others in the industry as well and do that sort of informal comparison. Just make sure, of course, that you're comparing apples with apples.
I think the other
your mate might be shipping dog food and you're doing fertilizer,
Exactly right. Yeah, because the fertilizer obviously has a DG component. So, and I think the other one that's probably a little bit misunderstood at times is, whenever I've been in an operational or a procurement type role, I've always maintained relationships with service providers that are not my current service provider. Because they will give me insights to the market because they're trying to win the business. They'll give me insights that I wouldn't normally get. And all of that's part of a strong procurement process, is that supply market analysis. So never be afraid to have conversations and a coffee with a potential supplier, and when the opportunity arises, just say, hey, look, I'm just interested in what's happening in the market. Can you send me a quote on this particular trade lane? As long as you're upfront and honest about what you're asking for, I have no issues with that type of thing.
And of course, talk to your current suppliers.
Yeah.
I'm a great believer in having very long-term supplier relationships.
Exactly right.
So make sure you do have that good, open, honest relationship with your suppliers. And if you've got concerns about the costs, get around the table, have a chat, understand what the things that you're doing that are driving their costs up. And
exactly right.
I know you're a great exponent of this, Trent. It's, make the task simpler, take out the complexity of the task, and that gets your rates down. So
look, Rob, you're 100% correct. In my experience, optimization will always deliver greater savings than sourcing.
Yeah.
Unless you're absolutely being ripped off, it's more than likely the savings are going to come from improving your network, improving your processes, etc.
Mm.
But that being said, benchmarking still has value once that's been done.
Mm. Look, I think benchmarking is tremendously important. You know, we've been doing it for 30 odd years. You know, why do it? Well, you've really got to know how the market's going. You know, you might think you're doing really well. You know, the analogy is often a sports analogy. You know, I'll get out and down to the local sports field and I'll run 100 meters in 20 seconds or something, you know, and I think I'm doing really great. But I need to know what's a good speed for people my age and so on, and fitness level. And then you find, oh, actually, it's 15 seconds. I'm not that good. Yeah. And it's just the same, you know, with costs in a business. You can be blissfully unaware if you're not making sure that you're kind of formally or informally benchmarking across the industry and you're aware of market trends and costs. And so, you know, there's a few things you can do there is get into industry associations, network informally with others in your industry. You know, you mentioned some great things to access online. You know, if at the end of the day you're really struggling and need some accurate benchmarking, well, you know, I guess you might have to talk to Trent. We'll put his details down below. But there might be a couple of people watching who think, oh, well, actually, I'll catch up with Trent and maybe he can help me out.
Yeah.
So, excellent. Anything you want to add to that, Trent?
No, I love your analogy about the sprinting. I was just thinking to myself, if I went down and sprint against my 11-year-old, I'd be super fast. If I sprint against my 17 and my 19-year-old, I'd be a slug. So, you're 100% right. You've got to be benchmarking yourself against the correct people.
You know, I'll go off at a tangent for a moment. I think there's a video about this on the channel where it was a few years ago now. A company asked us to come and benchmark their warehouse productivity, and it was an industry with, let's just say, it's ugly freight, very, very large, difficult to handle sort of products, and they were picking 15 order lines per hour in the warehouse, you know, per person, and they thought it was really good. And they were the best, you know, globally in their business. We said, that's shocking, you know. Oh, really? What should we be doing? And we sort of said to the MD, it should be like 50 an hour. Oh, you're kidding, aren't you? And they went through a process over 2 years of, you know, continuous improvement and working with the teams, and they hit 60, I think. So, you know, it's just a kind of a throwaway example of the importance of benchmarking. You might think you're actually okay. When you start looking around and seeing what other people are doing, you could be falling way behind.
Yeah.
There we go. Thanks for joining us again, Trent. I know your videos are always very popular. We'll have to drag you back again soon with some more topics. And thank you all for watching. If you've got any questions, do pop them down below. If you want to talk to Trent about benchmarking, I'll put a link down below as well. So we'll see you again soon.